afternoon, and welcome to Coverings Connected. In this afternoon's workshop, Young Professionals Program Leadership, the Right and Wrong of It. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items. All attendees are in listen-only mode. You can submit text questions to today's presenters by typing your questions into the questions section of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will share with the presenters during the Q&A at the end of the presentation, getting to as many as time allows. If you are having problems connecting or any other issues, often closing the window and starting a new window will fix the problem. If you are having problems with your computer audio, please call the number on your invitation to listen via your phone. The audio pin for this session is 83# or hashtag, depending on your generation. This session will be recorded and made available on the Coverings site after Coverings Connected. Don't miss all the other great Coverings Connected opportunities available through coverings.com today through Thursday. I would now like to introduce our wonderful presenter, Dr. Ashley Prisant, President, Square Peg Solutions. Take it away, Ashley.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. I truly wish that I was there with you in person down in New Orleans, but this is a close second, so we'll go with that. I'm really excited to be bringing this topic of leadership and the right or wrong of this because it kind of talks about two different perspectives. First, just wanted to make sure we've got a good sound check. Everybody's hearing okay? I'll take that. Yep,
We're good.
okay. Great, thank you. So let me tell you a little bit about how I teach things, and I teach virtually a lot. I teach in undergrad and graduate, and I'm used to this format, but I want to make sure that you are used to that. So we're going to try a couple of things in the chat or in the question. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and it doesn't matter to me if you can post it in the chat and you can send me an answer and say yes and respond, or you can post it in the question as a response. This is going to be a lot more interesting, a lot more fun if we can interact, and you're going to get a lot more out of this. A few other ground rules. I used to be in the military. I will not make you drop and do push-ups, but I will ask you to get yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit. Leadership is not easy, and I can teach you all different ways to be a leader, but at the end of the day, you're a different person than me, that's a different person than Michelle or Tim or John. I want you to walk away with 3 to 5 things that you can use immediately, right away, very applicable. So you do have a handout. I want you to refer to it as notes, but again, some of this is going to apply and it's going to immediately click. Other things may not work with you at the present time, and that's okay. My point is to give you a little bit of both sides of this coin as we go through. So let me get you guys started. Let's get you warmed up here. So I have a very important question. What's the worst birthday gift you've ever received? So either send me a answer in chat or in questions, and let me see if I can see those there. So I've got underwear. That's fantastic. Hopefully that was clean. Nothing. An unwrapped sprinkler. A coffee mug with your face on it. Hopefully it was a good one and not a mug. A poopsie. I'm sorry. A gym membership. I think that's kind of like the Peloton commercial we saw back at Christmas. A roll of duct tape. We're trying to tell you something. Nirvana sticker. My best friend gave me the goodie bag for her birthday. Was it like a good goodie bag? Did it have some good stuff in it? Fertilizer. A gift card that had already been used. Okay, so you guys are getting this. Oh, this one's bad. Peanut butter cookies, and she's allergic. Yeah, hopefully they didn't know it and it was the thought that counts. Oh my gosh, napkins. Oh gosh. You guys win. I've asked this question a couple of times, and yeah, you guys have some crappy birthday gifts. Okay, let's change it up. Let's ask one more question before we get started. Favorite villain? It doesn't have to be Disney. I just found a Disney picture, but who is your favorite villain of all times? Ursula, the Joker, Captain Hook. Is Wonder Woman a bad guy? Loki, I've heard that a while. Thanos, Medusa. Awesome. Okay, so now we've checked this and this works. Tony Soprano. Okay, there we go. Natural born killers. Okay, All right, so we'll keep it going. So now you guys know how that works. We'll get this talking. I would like to encourage, since that's working pretty well, to continue to use the questions kind of as a chat. Severus Snape, yes, love it. Reading that to my kids right now, book 2. So continue to share comments, and I think I'll be able to read them, and I will share those comments. So if you have something, if you have a quick question, feel free. I have this 2 screens up, so continue to do that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk in 2 different areas, kind of this black and white, the right and wrong. We're going to talk about conflict first. Conflict can take a little bit of time. It's probably what causes us more pain in general. So I want to kind of get into that first and get your mind flowing. And then we're going to take a step back and say, okay, now that we've gone through all of that, what can we do to say thank you? I think a lot of people struggle, especially in times now, and I really want to hear your stories. To how do you reward people, especially when you don't have money, you don't have time, heck, you don't even have them in the present. So I want you to think about those ideas. And I am going to read these. The question was just asked, where are people posting comments? The only place that I know of that we can do it right now is in the questions, and so I can read them. Unfortunately, we're not able to share them at this point. If we get that, I will let you know how that works. So just share the comment, and I will share it with the class, or with the session. Sorry, old habits die hard, and we can do that. And then we'll have a Q&A, but again, if there's a question that you have about the comments, go ahead and do that. And then we'll go to a virtual happy hour, and that will be in the Zoom. Validation, okay? All right, so let's keep going. So conflict. So I told you I was in the Navy. I was on a cruiser and a destroyer. This is a picture of my cruiser, CG-61 USS Monterey, and I was a damage control assistant. So those are the ones that are the leaders that fight fires, flooding on the ship. I worked for a chief engineer, and she was female, and at the time, female chief engineers on a ship were very rare. It's one of the most difficult positions on a ship. It was a few years ago, and it was probably maybe 15 or 20 to 1 male to female anyway. On an officer, it was even less. She dealt with conflict all the time, but part of the problem was she felt she had to prove herself. And so she took this major conflict and she made a challenge out of everything. And if you think about a big ship like this, it can be as war fighting as you want, but if you don't have an engine, you have nothing. And so she continued to fight up, down, left, and right. And so as we go through this conflict style, I want you to think about conflicts that you have been through recently. So take a second and maybe write down on your notes or think in your head 2 or 3 conflicts that you've dealt with, or that you're dealing with, or you're trying to figure out the best way, because this is what we're going to be talking about. Okay, so question for you. What's a time that you haven't dealt with conflict well? So I want you to think about it. Answer it in the question, and I'll try to read a couple of these. I want to kind of put this precursor: what goes on in Vegas stays in Vegas. I might read your answer, but I won't read who you are. But what I want you to do is there's a number of people in here, and everybody's dealt with this. So as you're typing out this answer of conflict, when's a time you haven't dealt with conflict? I want you to think about how you can share these with others, because other people have been through it as well. Is there a time? Now, I bet almost every single one of you have not dealt with conflict well. 2 team members arguing at a sales meeting. Yeah, that's a great one, right? I have 2 people butting heads. They're literally saying, you took my toy, and no, it's my toy. And you're looking at them like, wait, you're not 5, you're 35. What are you doing? Not being heard at work by your superior. Absolutely, that's another great one. And that even's not even obvious conflict. And I'm going to talk about the definition in a minute. Disagree with coworkers and decided to avoid communication rather than come to an understanding. That is a great example. We're going to talk specifically about that one in just a few minutes. A direct report, challenging my authority, arguing with my boss. Okay, so this is great. Every single one of you can have one of these. And if you didn't share it there, I want you to write it down, because I want you to think about why it didn't go well. Again, everything I'm teaching today, I'm going to tell you, it's a glass house. I have been there, done that, got the t-shirt, and I'll be happy to share. Some stories are more embarrassing than others, but this is one of the reasons I came back and I said, how do I apply? What is the ability to go through this and learn a better way to deal with it? Why don't you like conflict? What is it about conflict that just drives us crazy? Yes, you got the right place. It's stressful, right? It's driving us crazy. People don't want to change. It's uncomfortable. Thank you for sharing that. It is makes me anxious, right? Because, oh my gosh, what if the way I come across is wrong? I don't want to say it. I don't want to do it. What is it about it that's doing that? It costs time and money. Yes, thank you for that comment. We'll be approaching that one specifically. Confrontational. And you know what? There are some people that thrive on it. There are people that just, it's their power and they love it. It's emotionally draining for others, though. Good comment. And you don't want to deal with it, and sometimes we avoid the situation. So some of you have already kind of answered this question. How do you deal with it? You want to be a friend. It just creates more conflict. If I make this, it just makes it worse. It affects you. This is a good answer. It affects you on all aspects, not just necessarily the conflict. Jessica's pissed me off, and now I'm going to go off and be mad at her for something else that she didn't do. Hopefully, you guys are okay with that. Somebody, the little military in me, but we'll go with that. Um, it, I I put myself in the shoes of on their shoes of perspective. That's a great example. So again, I want you to continue to share these ideas, and I'll repeat them so that we can get some different ideas. One of the things I'm really going to encourage for you that's in here, if you go out and meet somebody, for those that are going to be in the happy hour afterwards, I want you to share some of these experiences, because there are going to be people that are similar to you or just different enough that they've approached a similar situation in a different way. When I teach my master's level leadership courses, this is exactly one of the things that I do is I give them a very simple simulation, and I'll have people that have been leaders for 20 years kind of get frustrated because I've done this, but I make them go through the same simulation 3 times, twice as a leader, once with an outsider, once with another student, and they're shocked at how different the same situation can be. So I want you to share with others and listen to the way that they address it. Try to be proactive, avoid different bias and your curiosity. Great answers. Okay, so I'm going to read this to you. Or actually, I'll stop for a second and take a drink. What do you think conflict is? Could somebody quickly define, in a categories, if anybody remembers that game mindset, what is conflict? Miscommunication. Two ideas trying to win. I really like that. Disagreement. Two opposing sides. Love it. I'm going to simplify this, and if you can, write down these words. And you don't have to write everything down, just the highlight. Any situation where your concerns or desires are my key words there, differ from that of another person. Okay, misunderstanding. So you guys are bringing it out. But here's what's different to me. You're in conflict all the time. Think about you are making a sandwich and you want ham and cheese, and your spouse or your kid or your friend wants peanut butter and jelly, or something happens anytime, or when you and another person want to share the same lane on the interstate, your concerns or desires are different from somebody else's. Does that mean that all conflict is bad? What do you think? Do you think that all conflict that we have is bad? I mean, we make more than 10,000 decisions every single day. Every single one of you probably don't realize it. Some of you more than others, some of you less, but you make those decisions, right? And so there's conflict that's going to happen. Let's kind of take a step back before we kind of dig into the things. How do you think conflict starts? How does conflict start in your world? Some of you guys have already mentioned a few of these, and I'm going to take them, and there's going to be a list here. So let's kind of think Family Feud style. Bad communication, absolutely. Don't see eye to eye. What are some examples? What are some ways? Attitude. I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm from the South. You guys, you Yankees, whatever. My bias, my perspective, differing opinions, absolutely. So here's a couple of ones. How about this one? Anybody have the I don't know what I'm doing? I have no idea. And so I'm trying to do something and I have no idea. Taking credit, no recognition. Sending written messages, right? Have you ever read an email and just gotten mad because of that? Making yourself inaccessible to the team. Now that's an interesting one. Sometimes we talked about avoiding conflict. I don't want to deal with it, but now you're making it worse. You're causing conflict. Yeah, great example. Not owning your errors. Hey, come tomorrow. I'll deal with you tomorrow. Introducing change without discussion. So I do a lot of change management consulting for a lot of companies. This is one of the top things that leaders do wrong. I want the change, so everybody that works for me will accept the change. There'll be no problem, no conflict. Let's just go buy another company and everybody in the company will be fine, right? That's, yes, absolutely. It's controversy. Poorly defined goals. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't trust you. And there's a couple of good books. There's Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni that kind of talks through this. And scarce resources. Maybe we're just kind of doing remember the game Hungry, Hungry Hippo? I'm just trying to get all this stuff as fast as I can. So let's kind of dig into this. I think that some of you received an email that talked about the Thomas Kilmann assessment. There's some free assessments out there. There's some paid assessments, depending on how much you want to look at. I'm hoping some of you are able to take a look at this ahead of time. I'm going to walk you through this at the high level. And what I'd love for you to do is kind of think about which one you tend to play in. Normally, people play in 2 of these if they have a choice. And you go from these 2, and then you should be in every single room. You should use every single one of these, but some of these are more comfortable than others. So take the test and see which 2 are your strongest, and then the other 2 which are not quite as strong, and how can you balance those, because you should try to find a way to use all of these. So one of my homework, my take-home lessons for you is figure out the 2 that you're most uncomfortable, that you're weakest, and figure out if you can use some of them more. So quickly, I'm going to circle the X and Y axis and talk about, on the Y axis, you'll see concern for self. So at the bottom, you're going to see I don't really concern for myself as much, and I don't really think about myself. At the bottom, you have low, and that's avoiding, and high, that's competing. We'll talk about those, and collaborating. On the x-axis, you have concern for others. How much do I care about Lauren or Misha or Rich or Anna if this happens, or do I just not care? If I don't care, then I'm here closer to this 0. If I do care, I'm further out on the x-axis. So we're going to break these down. Again, what I want you to do is think about those situations. I want you to think about some conflicts and think about which one you use. Some of you mentioned these. I want you to pick when the right time is, because again, you should use all 5 conflict styles, but deciding when is the key part of this management of conflict. Avoiding. So the idea of, I'll think about it later, I'm going to push it out. When I went through marriage counseling, one of the things I realized or we learned was, hey, sometimes a good argument is an argument that doesn't happen. Anybody ever hear that? So, and I thought, and I used that in other parts of life. If you don't have to get to a solution, if the solution's going to go away, so digging your heels in won't really get anything except hurting some feelings maybe. So you're trying to dodge the situation. So here's some of the reason that you do this. You can give other people ownership. You know your limitations. You know that, you know what, I'm not going to win this fight. Now remember, this is at the bottom. So you have low concern for yourself and low concern for others. And some of you mentioned this before, avoid emotional conflicts. And feel free, if one of you want to share an example of when you've used an avoiding situation, I'll kind of summarize what this is. For me, I have a couple of them. I went to my boss when I worked at Amazon, and I was an operations manager, and I was very upset, and I had some issues. He did not want to deal with it. He could see I was upset, and he said, I got to go. Yeah, that didn't work out very well. He tried to avoid the situation, so it got worse. It got worse, and that ended up blowing up in both of our faces. But I've also done this. I had an employee that wanted to apply for a promotion, and I had to write a letter to say, hey, look, I think he's good for this. Well, I didn't think he was. He wasn't anywhere near ready, not close, and maybe on the border, and maybe it was my perspective. Yeah, no. And so I pushed it off, and not something that I'm proud of, but I finally had to face this. That's something when I had to do it. So you should do this when it's important. You should say, hey, if you can avoid without being evasive. I was being evasive. I like this, breaking the anger cycle. Is it something that you can break and say, hey, look, we need to take a step back. We need to walk away. And it's this ability to leave things unresolved. If you're going to get mad at somebody that's just going to leave in a week, let it go. Now, there's an over and under use of this. If you use this too much, for those of you that really do not like conflict. As a leader especially, people are just gonna make decisions around you. It's gonna happen. They're just gonna work around you. And people are gonna get really pissed. People are gonna get frustrated because you're not doing anything. I've seen managers and a variety of consulting that I've done that, you know what, the people that work for me, they're all type A, they're narcissistic, they're just this, and I'm just gonna let them do it. But then you've got the other people that are quietly doing what they're supposed to, and they're getting frustrated. So think about that. If you don't use it enough, so if you find yourself in the other ones, you can stop prioritizing. You can say, hey, look, I need to get in every conflict. I need to do everything. And sometimes you just need to avoid them. I'm going to stop here. Any questions, comments, concerns on avoiding? Any examples? I'll tell you, the one thing I learned about it is that avoiding is a good conflict style to have. For those of you that find yourself more into the other styles, it's one that I want you to try to do. Walk away from a situation. That doesn't mean avoid it completely, but without being evasive could be a good thing. Avoiding is good. There are situations when it is good. If the problem is not going to resolve itself, if you and I are just going to fight about it and then nothing's going to get resolved, or we're too hot-headed, sometimes avoiding is kicking the can down the road. Let's wait 3 hours and talk about it again. Good question. All right, I'm going to keep going. Oops. All right, so accommodating, and I'm going to pick up the pace just a little bit because I want to make sure we have some time for questions. It would be my pleasure. Now, here's the thing. It's low on the care for myself, but high on the care for others. I want to yield to you. I want to make you happy. Any ideas why accommodating could be a bad thing? And I'm going to ask that question, so feel free to type that in, but I'll continue talking. You accommodate if you screwed up. It says, to clean up hard feelings. Why am I doing it? To help you out. I had an employee that worked for me, and I am very much a high level person, and he's very detail oriented. He's very smarter. He's better at grammar too. He was much smarter than me in many areas. And it just frustrated me. And I'm like, give me the details, Levi, give me the details. I had to accommodate him because I didn't understand and I didn't know. And it was frustrating to me, but I had to accommodate to get the best results. You get taken advantage of. My manager at work confronts me and I'm avoiding him, and then she confronted me. It was very uncomfortable. Yeah, absolutely. If you do this all the time, and we're kind of jumping into head with that comment, but that's totally fine. If you use it too much, then people just take you for granted. Absolutely. And even to the point, it kind of gets you to the extreme of anarchy. Okay, so you're not going to have the power and influence that you have to get it done. It'll make issues fester because you don't ever make decisions. Yeah, absolutely. Other staff gets resentful, and people will not respect you. But if you don't use it at all, then people are just going to think that you're never going to let them win. Let me ask that question. Is it okay for leaders to let, and I'm using the word let their team win, let their individuals win? Yeah, absolutely it is. And that's hard because I've seen so many new leaders that come out and say, well, I'm a leader, so I've got to be right. And it's very embarrassing if I'm found to be wrong. No, it's not. You coming out and putting your hands up and saying mea culpa, or I messed up, or I didn't know that, that's really smart. In fact, you're supposed to not be the smartest person in the room. So again, accommodating, you can satisfy a complaint, you can begin something and build a relationship. So accommodating should be used, just like all the others, it should be used sparingly. Now I'll put a little asterisk around this and grant you there are certain industries, jobs, positions where some need to be used as much more. We'll talk about confrontation in a minute. There's certain ones that you're going to have to use in situations, but everyone should be used at some time. Without favoritism. Yep, absolutely. Okay, so let's get into the middle of the box, right? This should be the perfect one, right? It's in the middle, it's compromising. Let's make a deal and meet halfway. Let's say, hey, look, we're going to resolve these issues, less important, but not vital. Now, isn't this interesting? We're saying this is perfectly in X marks the spot in the perfect place, but not the vital ones. Taking turns bearing small costs, backup when competing and collaborating are not practical. Why do you think compromising is not the perfect one. So I'll keep talking, but I want you to think about this, because compromising, and by the way, the answer's that you cannot, none of the 5 are the perfect one, but I want you to tell me why you think compromising isn't perfect. Because we can make concessions. I meet you in the middle and you meet me in the middle, but it may not be the best, right? And has anybody ever heard of a zero-sum game? It doesn't necessarily mean, yes, short-lived solutions, because maybe we're confronting and we don't have to be. We're having this confrontation. We don't have to be. A way that I've done it that did well was I used to be a financial controller, and I used to work with the general manager of my building. And so I managed the budget and he managed the people. And so we had 2 conflicts, right? Because you always want to give your people more money, but you can't do it if you have a certain amount of budget. And so we worked together and we compromised because it was something that needed to be working together. Yeah, may not be worse for business. In your response, you don't technically resolve something. They may not be right. But you just roll with it. So compromising is good if it's not a big picture, if it's not that. And sometimes you need to have a win-win situation where it might be a little bit, I lose a little, you lose a little. It is a good one to have, but it's not for everything. Great. Okay, so now we get to the fun one. This one's always fun to me, I think. Competing. How many of you out there have had the boss that this is their world? They love this category. I told you about my chief engineer. She was in this one. This is a good one to have. For those of you that found yourself more in the avoiding or the accommodating, I want to challenge you to get in here. For those of you that say, this is my go-to, I want you to get out of here, but I want you to understand why. So look at this top one. When quick, decisive action is required. That means I'm getting it done. The prime example I think about, and many of you are probably too young to remember this, was 9/11. In 9/11, Rudy Giuliani, the mayor of New York City, had to make some decisive actions. He couldn't wait for consensus. He couldn't wait for compromising. He had to get it done. And some of them, to the second point, was unpopular decisions. And I'll tell you another one. Actually, I was reading an article today about the Zoom CEO who's having to make a lot of decisions because he's in a place he never expected to be. They're under attack. People are saying they're doing it wrong. And he's having to he's probably using this conflict style because they have to just get it done. It is not one to stay in, but it is a very productive one when it is. Now remember, it's high on the me scale and low on the everybody else scale. So thinking about this, it is some of the challenges is fighting fair, and people can get out of that very quickly. Using warnings instead of threats. So I'm threatening you is a very thin line between warnings. Tough love, this one at the bottom, I think that's a really good one. People that do it well do this behavioral category over here on the left. But those of you that love competing, here's your problems. No feedback. Just do it, just do it, just do it. And all I'm going to do is say, okay, check box. I'm only going to do the bare minimum. So your tyrant bosses, yes. So there you go. Ex-military, that it comes out. It's very hard to get away from that. And I love this one. Low empowerment and surrounded by yes people. I'm going to do what you say, and that's it. So you lose them. You lose the creativity. But if you never use it, if you don't ever use it, then you can have some people that, will go walk all over you. You don't get your contributions. And sometimes there is a reason for that. So some of you might sit back and say, holy cow, where am I going to do with this? I want you to be aware of this. Go out and read a little bit more information. Send me an email after this and I can send you some more material. But this isn't something to use just in a couple of hours. This is something to just be aware of when that conflict style, because the one that your go-to is, when your comfortable one, may not be the right one. Yep, military, first responder, absolutely. All right, the final one is collaboration. Now, I've already told you the answer. It's not compromising. Collaborating is both high on the people and high on the others. Why do you think this one's not the best one? Let's keep talking about it and see if anybody can give me an answer. So if you want the interest and everybody has a piece of the pie. It is great for learning. We can all understand it. We all came along, and we need an organizational commitment to this. So why do you think collaborating's great, but why do you think collaborating? Absolutely, Lauren got it. So it's a lengthy process. Oh my gosh, everybody got onto it here. I got like 10 responses. Reduce productivity, yes. So I tell this story. I worked in academia, but I come from the corporate environment, and I sat in on an academic meeting. And I was sitting there with about 40 professors in the room, and I listened as 3 of them argued for 30 minutes on something that may affect 10 students. I'm sorry, 6 students out of 4,000, maybe. This was collaborating at its worst. This was a waste of time. But the dean wanted to let them happen because if they didn't have their say, they would pitch a fit. Absolutely. So, Joseph, hold that question. That is a good question. And let me finish this and I'll come back to you. So again, if you need this, if you're going to change a big policy, if you're going to change the medical insurance of your company, if you're going to do something that needs company buy-in, you do want this. You want to start early. It's part of a change management process. If you've never learned anything about change management or some of the structure there, it's some easy kind of complex things can be very simplified and can easily get you to implement something much easier. So reach out for me on that, and I can talk a little bit more about that. You do want to collaborate when it's a big choice, when it's a big decision. You don't want to collaborate when time's of essence. So that's kind of the driver there. So the question was, how do we adapt these styles to inspire and leading change in our trade at large? So again, remember what conflict was, is that desire, and that when my desire, what I want is different than yours. So it depends on the scalability. In organizational behavior, we look at 3 groups in an organization: the individual, the team, and the organization. So to your question, Joseph, if it was, which is a great question, if I'm focusing on just me and you, then I might be able to pick a specific one. Collaborating, let's collaborate together. But if I'm looking at a team, there's going to be different styles. What is the mission? What are you trying to accomplish? If you just need to get it done, then that competing might be the way to go. If you want them to have a little bit more involvement, then you can kind of meld that. I will come back to that in just a little bit, but yes, that's one way that you can absolutely do that. Okay, so that's kind of the summary of the TKI. Again, there's different ways that you can use them. I want to challenge you to one. I saw some of you sent me your scores. Think about which ones you score high in and which ones you score low in, and try to if avoiding is your low score, don't just avoid just to say you check the box. I want you to think about a situation. If you're competing, you're kind of hot-headed. Think about a time and try to cognizantly try to go after a time where I'm going to step back, and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. But I want you, maybe it's not a situation that it's, a life or death kind of thing, but I want you to try these. The biggest thing I want you to take away from this is awareness of which one works for the current situation, and how to do that. Questions? Actually, I'll read this and we'll do questions. So here's a few ways to do this, and this kind of builds on the question there. I say this over and over: help your leaders understand your viewpoint, and talk about terms they're comfortable in. I talk about, this is what I say is politics at work. Politics is not just saying what somebody, oh, I've got to scratch this person's back or whatever. To me, politics is understanding personalities. And I say this a little bit facetiously, but if Samantha loves to if she's a morning person and she does her best work before 10, I'm going to go and talk to her before 10 a.m. But if Joseph can't even be bothered before 11, I'm not going to do it, because it's that personality, it's that perspective, it's understanding who they are to get that. That to me is politics. And I can talk a little bit more about later. But again, if you're trying to manage up, who are you working for? What's their personality? What's their motivation? We're going to talk about motivation in just a second. But if you can figure out what's motivating them, what is bothering them in their background can absolutely help with that. ENTJ, so the different kind of personalities, type A, introvert. ENTJ is an MBTI, which is another Myers-Briggs. It's an assessment that you can take online. If you haven't taken it, it's very interesting to understand your different personalities. And I know I'm throwing out a lot of concepts, and that's intentional, because I know they're going to resonate with different people. If there's a concept you want to know more about, we can talk more later about it. Relator is actually a reference to StrengthsFinder. Some of you have maybe had taken that assessment. I think assessments are great to get some information, but it's how you use that. Again, if you're going to look at peers or teams, understand, and a few people have already said this, what's their perspective? Why are they different? And here's the bottom one: be okay with that variance. Okay, and I'm sorry, that kind of sucks because they're wrong and you're right. Your hunch is right and they're wrong. Well, guess what? They think the same thing. You've got to be okay with that. It is hard and it is uncomfortable to let that be true, but it is. And if you want to move forward, that's some of the ways to do that. Any thoughts, questions, concerns before I move on to the other side? If all of your scores are pretty high, that's a good thing. That means that you seem to be pretty comfortable with those. I think. So the question was, if I scored pretty high on all of these, what would I do? I think that means, again, that you're comfortable with that, but I would challenge you to think about, where are you finding conflict now? And is it because when the chips are down and you're very uncomfortable, you default to competing when maybe you should go to collaborating? So I would challenge you to think about situations where it didn't go well. I'll tell you, I had a student that started challenging some things that other students were saying in class, and it just made me mad. And I had to stop myself and think about it before I defaulted to a competing, which was shut her down, play the I'm the boss teacher card, and be done with it. My score is low. Where should I go now? So if your score is low, I think that, again, it's the awareness. What I would challenge you to do is, in the areas that it's low, go research, go look at some of this information that I've shared, or I can share some more with you to say, here's those styles, like those list of things that we talked about. And where can we go? Again, it's being aware when the situation happens. Like with this woman, this student of mine, I recognized she made me mad. She pushed my buttons, and I really wanted to shut her down. That was my go-to. But I had to take a step back and try to figure out why. And I realized her personality was such that she just tells it like it is, and she doesn't have a filter. And so I may not be able to give her the feedback in this capacity, but I can at least not fly off the handle like I really wanted to do. A reliable personality test was the question. Where can I take one? So I am an MBTI instructor. I've been trained in that, so I'm a little bit partial to it. I do like StrengthsFinder as well. There's a number of assessments that you can find online that you can do paid or unpaid. So it just depends on how much and what you want to do with it. Okay. So now we're going to go to the other side. And I'm going to ask this question. So I want a few answers and I'll keep on going. What ways have you built a positive workforce or team? And it doesn't mean the whole strategy, but what are some of the things that you've done to build a team? And apologies, I'm scratching my nose. I've got allergies. I promise that's it. Yeah, we've got a whole bunch of pollen going on here. Showing appreciation. Team lunch on Fridays, paid by the company. I love it. How do you show appreciation? During the crisis, holding a weekly coffee talk, I've heard a lot of that. In fact, the icebreakers that I used at the beginning of this, I started introducing those into my regular meetings just because it opens it up and it gets people to talk about something when small talk isn't really as easy. I find ways to link people's different talents. I love that one. I love that one because you don't know. It helps them go beyond their job description. It helps them allow them to do those things. That's fantastic. Just say thank you. Yep. Doesn't cost you a thing. Early out on Fridays in the summer, basically. Merchandising. I hear merchandising, all I can think about is Spaceballs. If you haven't seen that movie, then that's on your homework to do. Commendations, care packages, personality. That's a great one, right? So if you're saying thank you to me, I'm fine with you saying it in front of a bunch of people, but if you were to say it to my sister, she'd say, no, just give me a card. I'm good. That's great. Okay, so here's a couple of things. Now I wrote a book called Go Beyond the Job Description, and it goes into detail a lot, and it's based on a lot of between the military and Amazon and a couple other Fortune 500s companies I work for. I kept seeing these themes as a leader. I kept seeing them over and over. I went back, received my PhD, and I dug into why do people do what they do at work, and how do you reward them? How do you motivate them? And to me, motivation is the primary key. One of the reasons I put rewards at the end of this is because I could talk about this all day. So if I don't go into enough detail in the next 20, 30 minutes, let me know, and I'll be happy to share more information with you later. But when I did this research and I found out over and over, these things make an impact. And oh, by the way, it ain't money. It's not the money. Yes, money is a motivator to a certain point, but once you get past that point, it's almost a negative impact. It's almost negative. So I'm going to try to open your horizons on some perspectives. Again, introducing some new material, and your notes should have some of this. If you want more material, we can talk about it later. So anchors of motivation, talent engagement, and communication. Okay, has anybody ever heard of career anchors? I am going to guess no. Oh, Matthew has. Gosh, Matthew, now you've ruined my joke, because I was going to say I can tell you anything I want. No. Okay, great. So motivation anchors was actually coined about 30 plus years ago by Edgar Schein, and it's still used today. It's been updated a little bit, but the idea is there. An anchor, a career anchor, an anchor's motivation is something that said, if I offered you in your current job 20% more money, more responsibility, a promotion, you would say no. You would say no because I would take away this one thing that you love the most. Now let's hold it all constant and fair. Let's say you don't have an aunt that's in the hospital and you have other things, but if you only work for your motivation, this is what it is. So I'm going to go through these really quickly. I want you to think about what these are. You can actually take an assessment online. There's a couple of free ones and not free ones, but I want you to think about what they are. Let me give you a quick example of what mine are. My top two are dedication, service to a cause, and lifestyle. I love teaching. I love being in front of a group like this and saying, hey, how can I make you better? How can I help you go beyond what you normally do? I love the feedback. I love the chat that you have. Just you guys just saying, hey, this was good. I really enjoyed it. I really liked the career anchors aspect. That really helps me, and that motivates me. The lifestyle is my other one. I have small children, and I used to work very long hours in the military, very long hours at Amazon. I don't want to do that anymore. And so lifestyle is more important. If you offered me 50% more pay or 100% more pay, I would still say no because I'd be working, 80 plus hours or whatever. I've done that. I've got that t-shirt. Lifestyle is most important to me. So think about it in terms of you, and then think about this in terms of the people that work for you, because if they're different, there's your conflict, but how can you give them more? So let's keep running. Technical functional. Somebody who's technical function likes to do things with their hands or just get into it. So I say hands, I mean they could be a pilot, they could be a computer programmer, they could be, my sister is a nurse anesthetist. She's a technical functional. If you offered her more money to be a manager and general managerial, she would say no. She loves doing what she does. So these people, give them more of this. And think about this. Have you ever heard the salesman that gets promoted to sales manager and then he's terrible? This is why. He's a technical functional and he wants to do that. Next door is general managerial, and this isn't just, hey, I want to be a manager. It means that you want to be climbing the ladder. You want to see the view. You want to see the strategic piece. I was very much like this at the beginning. When I was in the Navy, I definitely wanted the big view and things like that. And then things change. Your career anchors can change over time. Your motivation can change. So somebody's like this, you want to show them how they can make it to that perspective. Autonomy, independence. This means I am here, I am sitting in my station, and I want to be left alone. If you have somebody working for you here, don't micromanage them. It's the worst thing that you can do. And that's hard for some of you because, that person just can't do it. figure out a compromise before the two of you go crazy. Leave me alone, give me my work, and let me be. And it doesn't have to be just say, hey, push me over to the side. Just give them a piece of it, because maybe you can't give them everything. Maybe you have 50 people in the same room, but how can you let them do this? And one of the ideas of this, and we'll talk about that in the next slide in talent engagement, is let them come up with it. You don't have to think about all of this. Let them get them to thinking of a way. Security stability. Here's a quick trivia question. If I were to ask you through the three generations, if it was boomers, Generation Xers, and millennials, which group would be most in this group? Most of you would say boomers. It actually is a tie between boomers and millennials. So there's a lot of people in this category that this is one of their top ones. Now you may ask why. I don't care what I do as long as I know I have a job and it's stable. I have a family member that is in this category. He doesn't make a fantastic amount of money. He probably could get more money elsewhere, but he wants to stay there. He knows that this job is for him and it will be there for him. For people like that, they need to have confidence. I worked for a company once that we found out that we were getting sold to private equity in an email newsflash from the local news journal. I had a lot of people in security stability that freaked out. It freaked out. So give them the heads up. I have a somebody I'm working with that's a CIO of a company that they're going to lay people off in the next year, and he's asking when he should do it. And I said, you need to pay attention to this. You need to not death by 1,000 paper cuts. You need to give them the information, because otherwise this is going to tank them in motivation in many ways. Is it possible to be multiple at the same time? Yes, you can be 3 of them at the same time, and this will change. But again, you've got to look at what the motivator is and how you're going to adapt to that. But yeah, absolutely. Entrepreneurial creativity. One of my favorite ones, just because it's so different. It doesn't mean you want to start a business. It doesn't mean you're artsy fartsy or whatever. It means that, hey, you've got this creative mind. I'll give you a great example. When I was doing my research, I interviewed a gentleman who was an IT finance manager, which is not prone to a lot of creativity. And I presented the results to him, and he said, well, wow. And he went to his boss and he said, I want to do something creative. I'm summarizing a little bit. And he received this project where he was the manager. He was the PM, project manager, and he loved it. He loved it so much that 3 months later he quit and joined. He became the finance controller for a small startup, and he is doing fantastically. But it's being aware of that motivation and getting into that really helped him do that. I've talked to you a little bit about service, dedication to a cause. Hey, I want to go and do and help out. You'll find a lot of teachers, nurses, people that want to dedicate to something. These are great. These people are great, and I can say that even though I'm one of them, because but the best part about it is to help them, give them feedback. I appreciate something specific. Now, thank you is good, but I appreciate you, Matthew, for getting that paper in and it looking fantastic on the font or whatever. Yes, there's an assessment. It's called Career Orientation Inventory. I can send you the link later. It might actually be in the packet. I can't remember if we put it in there, or you can just Google it. It's on there, and there's books as well. All right, let me quickly wrap these up. Pure challenge. I don't care what it is. I'm just going to climb it. It's a ladder. It's a mountain. Give it to me. I love these people because you want to give them just enough that you have no idea how they're going to do it, but just enough. Because they're going to do it because it's there. Kilimanjaro is there. Let's climb it. Put it in front of them and just watch them run. This is one of the things I think it's interesting to give your people this assessment, because you can find out, hey, they really love this. Okay, let me give Dana a little bit more challenge here and see what she does with it. She'll probably enjoy that. So I think that's a great one. Lifestyle. As I've told you, hey, you know what? I don't care what I do. I'll do whatever. I'll tell you, my kids are homeschooling right now. I've learned I'm a better adult instructor than teaching my kids who are in elementary school. So my morning's pretty much lost to me every day. And in the afternoons and in the evenings, I work late into the evenings, and I'm okay with that because that's my lifestyle. I could not do a normal 9-to-5 job because of how I want to manage that. And I'm fine working many, many hours, but it's on my schedule. Okay, let's do this really quickly. Let's see how you're paying attention. I'm going to give you guys a couple of actors. Tell me 1 or 2 anchors you think they would be, or famous people. So for those that can't see, this is Kim Kardashian. Give me 1 or 2 that you think she might be. Lifestyle. I got a bunch of lifestyles. Entrepreneurial creativity. Okay. I would agree with that too. I think that, we see this one side, pure challenge. Okay. So you're seeing kind of how this works. Lifestyle. Okay. What about Oprah Winfrey? Service, dedication, or cause. Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with that. Yeah, and I love how you're using that. Yes. Let's see, entrepreneurial creativity. I think so. I think there's different elements of that, that she's done that. And if you kind of see through those. Independence. Yeah, I think especially if you looked at some of her younger life and how she kind of came through that challenge. Yeah, give it to me. You don't say I can't start up my own network. Watch. Can't start my own magazine. Watch. Yeah. All right. Final one. Elon Musk. What do you think about him? Technical, yeah, technical functional. And that's an interesting one. He's the CEO. And if you've read a little bit about him, he's kind of struggled with that. He's struggled sometimes with the general managerial side. Um, and he has looked at it and said, hey, I'm kind of taking a step back. And with that, so autonomy, entrepreneurial creativity. So yeah, this is just a quick example of how to use this, but that is one of the ways I would recommend that. So great job. Great job on those. And by the way, I tried a couple of new people this time. Normally I have Michael Jordan. So if you've got some recommendations on some other people that you think would be good with this, send me an email. I'd love that feedback. Okay, so 2 more concepts and we'll be wrapping up here. We talked about just a little while ago of how are we going to do this? We've got all these anchors, right? How in the world are we going to have time? I have 10 people working for me. I've got all these things going on. I've got, we're all working from home. How in the heck am I supposed to do this? You don't have to do this alone. So let me look at you here. You've got this little blue dot. Now, if I were to ask you, oh, Kobe's a good one. If I were to ask you 3 to 5 things, oh, I'll be nice, 2 or 3 things that's on your job description right now, how many people could do it? How many people would say, yes, I can exactly say what's on my job description? Most people can't. And why not, right? Yeah, not me. I'm getting a lot of nopes, not me, never. I couldn't do it when I read it. And it's a problem. I mean, part of the reasons we have to have this job description, but we go beyond it all the time. So if this is the knowledge you need for the job description, what can you do? If I were to ask you the question and say, what else do you know? Or what was the favorite thing that you've done in your past? What do you miss about a previous job? What are your talents and strengths that's outside the job description? There's some things in the job description that's your talent or strength, theoretically. But what goes beyond it? What's outside of here? Do you know it and can you use it? So that's my first question I want to ask you. Think about yourself. What of your job do you use? But more importantly, what is not being asked of you, but you could, that could be useful? And can you share it with them? Can you share it with your leadership? If you do, you're increasing what's called talent engagement, using these extra strengths and skills. I'll give you a quick example. A number of years ago, I was working in operations and I had a boss who was fairly open to things. And I took actually StrengthsFinder and found out my number one strength is learner teacher. This is before I started teaching. And I went to my boss and I said, I really want to use this strength. It's not in my job description, but it's one of my talents. Can I do it? And he said, yeah, we need to have some leadership development in our team. Go do something. So on my own time, on my own dime, I created a 3 or 4 session leadership program. I loved it. I was so motivated to do it. He let me get up in front of our department and present this. It was a win-win. It was a win for me. I was motivated. It was a win for the department because they got to learn something. So I'm going to challenge you, again, giving you different ideas. We're talking about rewarding. What if you gave people what they wanted, which is to be more appreciated, more engaged? So I'm going to challenge you. What if you went back to your people and said, hey, what are you good at? What could you do for this company that goes beyond what we're asking you to do? Maybe it's a party planner. Maybe it's somebody who's in finance that wants to look at marketing. Maybe you want to learn something. Maybe you're in IT and you want to look about HR. Don't limit yourself to what you know. Ask your employees. Yeah, well, job descriptions can be very generic. And so that's one of the reasons why, hey, let's let people do this. I'm not asking you to do this for your people. It's got to be a team effort. Okay, I'm going to keep going. So this will be a quick one. The top 3 things over and over and over. It's what keeps me in business is if I could suggest to leaders anywhere, everywhere, it does not matter if they're a frontline leader or a senior leader, we screw this up. We screw this up every day. So communication and accountability. Communication is, if you're not me, you cannot get the message. And I spent a whole time talking to groups about how do you communicate with others and how do you get more of the message across. You are, even as I'm talking to you right now, I'm not getting feedback or you're not getting the message exactly as I'm presenting it. So I'm trying to over communicate and do certain things. You're still not going to get 100% of the message. It's impossible. So think about that next time you have a conversation with a friend or a loved one. They're not getting 100%. They're not in your mindset. They're not in your experience. They're not where you are. So communication, this is what you need to help with your employees. Understand that 100% of your message will never get through. Get that feedback loop. Continue to do that. Feedback and training. And I put feedback on both sides because it's so important. Show us an example. Leaders over and over and employees want to know what they're doing wrong and right. And the funny part is millennials get this bad rap of they don't want feedback. Actually, they're one of the groups that prefer it most, and that's many of you. So make sure that this bias, this unconscious bias that a lot of the senior groups have, hey, no, you have to explain to them, I want this. Don't cause conflict. I really want to do this. And finally, accountability. And I want to look at you here for just a second. Accountability is hard. It is conflict. It is holding you accountable for what you're doing. And I'm going to show you this example. This is a bit of a personal example, and then we're going to wrap up. Now, I have to ask this question. What do dogs, kids, and employees have in common? I want you to just don't think about seriously for a second. Give me a couple of chats, and then I'm going to tie this up with accountability, and we'll wrap up. What do dogs, kids, and employees have in common? They can be trained. They breathe. They like to eat. They cost money. They are potty trained. They make a mess. They like treats. Yes, I love this. You're responsible for them. They listen. Well, at least they do for you. All right. Let's talk about it here. So this is my dog. This is my puppy. Well, she was a puppy then. She's 13 now. What do you do with dogs, right? They like walks, they can grow. Sometimes you wish they wouldn't. Sometimes you wish they just grow away. So I went to puppy school with my dog, Riley. And if you've ever been to puppy school, it's not about training you, it's about training the dog. And so I would say, Riley, come, Riley, come, Riley, come. And the trainer would say, no, no, one time. You say it once, and then you bring her over here gently, and you say, hey, and you do it once, and you reward her. But you do it once. You're consistent with that message. They don't get to choose. They understand that. These are my kids. And what about that? Have you ever had a kid that you say, hey, put away your toys or no dessert after dinner? And then you give them dessert. Have you ever done that? I know none of you have. Or, hey, you're going to bed at 8 o'clock. And then it's 8:30 and some things happened, right? So it's being consistent, and consistent with that message is key. Employees are the exact same way. Holding them accountable. Do what you say what you're going to do. I'll tell you, one of my opportunities or weaknesses is I get distracted. I multitask a lot, and sometimes I'll actually forget things that I say. I have a terrible short-term memory, and I will be over communicate with my team and say, if I tell you something on Monday and change it on Tuesday, please call me out. It doesn't mean that I'm changing my mind. It means I may have just missed, or I may have written something down wrong, or whatever. If you're going to say no the third time, say it the first time. Absolutely. And this is challenging, but it's being consistent with your message, whatever that message is. And there are times when I have to think about what I'm going to, tell my kids, don't do this or else X. Whatever X is, you absolutely have to do it. Is there such a question as too much communication? With only a few minutes to go, I'm going to say that the short answer is almost always no, but yes, there can be, and it depends on the situation. So I'm going to let us go to happy hour in a little bit, and then I can talk more about that situation. So hold that question. I want to make sure, but it's a really great question. And if I don't have any more, then I will go with that. So again, I've presented a lot of information in the last hour. And the reason I did this is because I wanted you to have a couple of tools. I don't expect everything to resonate with you. Some of you are going to say, oh my gosh, everything was great. pick 2 or 3 of them and maybe shelve these notes, shelve my email address and say, hey, maybe you'll come back. I want you to figure out how to find a balance between these two, because it's going to happen. Both of them are going to happen, and I want you to think through this. I want you to take some homework home. Now, obviously nobody's going to check it, but you go through these seminars, you're going through all this information. It's, you've got all these different people talking to you. Do something with what I told you today, or something that you heard from somebody, or maybe what you're going to do in this next session. Plan something for you to do in the next 2 weeks. Write it down, send an email, talk to somebody, try out the conflict styles, ask your people something. Give yourself some time in the next few quarters. And here's a big one: get feedback. Don't just take this and listen and walk away. If you do, that's great. Then you've just checked a box. But I want you to, everything I've said has been used and applied many times, and broken by me, but with other people as well. These are such good questions. I want to make sure I give time. So I'm going to make sure and do this. But again, I want you to apply this information. Pick the one that works for you, and share with that. So let me see. I'm going to answer these questions. And yep, go ahead. Yep.
Since we are out of time, I can forward you the questions if you want to follow up directly with those individuals. I'm happy to do that.
Yes, that's fine. And I'm going to be in the happy hour with those. Yeah. So I'll stay in the main room if people want to have questions.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Ashley. This is wonderful, fantastic amount of information. We can't thank you enough. And hopefully we'll be able to convince you to come back and join us in person next year at Coverings 2021. So this was great. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone for attending Coverings Connected. Once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a short survey. We promise you it's short. It'll be on the presentation. We'd appreciate it if you'd complete it and provide us your feedback. Coverings 2021 will take place April 13th through 16th in Orlando next year. There'll be more information on this in the coming months. We hope you'll join us. And as Ashley mentioned, there is a networking happy hour on Zoom directly after this. The link information was in the chat box. We also want to send a virtual congratulations to all of our 2020 Rockstar Award winners. You can check out all of the wonderful winner information on the Rockstar page on coverings.com. And on behalf of Coverings Connected and our presenter, thank you all for joining us today, and we hope to see you back. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.